the dispatcher gets a call from range control, a technical sergeant from range control, and he says, I'm reporting an event that occurred at LF21 and LF10, two different sites in the same location. And what he said was the contractors working on site called range control, and he said there was a gigantic floating red square over LF21 at low altitude. And they were just standing there watching this thing.
A red square. So
red square.
one thing that people have asked me after I spoke about this case at the hearing was, what does that mean, a red square? Right? Was this a cube? Did it not look like it had depth, and so it's described as a square? I said square in the hearing because that's how it was described to me, just as you described it. And I'm curious if you have any additional details that you could add. Was it a three-dimensional object? Did it just appear to be a square, and it just you couldn't tell?
We've got some huge news regarding some crazy things going on that are going to be happening in September for the UAP community, right? So it's been confirmed that there will be a UAP hearing this September. You know, this was touted to be off, and then it was on, and then it was off, but it's been confirmed by Representative Anna Paulina Luna that there will be a hearing next Tuesday on September 9th, 2025 at 10 a.m. That'll probably be, American time. And it's going to be a big deal because you're going to be able to watch it on X and you're going to be able to watch it on YouTube. And we've had the people that will be speaking and testifying in front of Congress confirmed. So this is pretty big. So obviously, this was all over the place. Anna Paulina Luna got into another spat online with someone regarding whether it was on or off, but she's confirmed that it is going to be on. Task Force and the Declassification of Federal Secrets Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, UAP hearing, restoring public trust through UAP transparency and whistleblower protection, September 9th, 2025, 10 a.m, US Capitol Visitor Center, room HVC 210. Watch it on X and on YouTube. And then she shared a little document about it as well. Now, this is quite a big deal. Representative Eric Burleson, who of course is being advised by David Grush at the moment, has also confirmed that the hearing will be taking place. And also, quotations, restoring public trust through UAP transparency and whistleblower protection. Now, this is quite a big deal, ladies and gentlemen, because that is the tagline for this one. Restoring trust in government, essentially, right? Restoring trust through UAP transparency. That's the big tagline that they're really going for. Now, Luna announces hearing on transparency related to unidentified anomalous phenomena. Washington Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets Chairwoman Anna Paulina Luna today announced the hearing on restoring public trust through transparency on UAP protection. During the hearing, members will hear from witnesses on the continued concerns regarding the disclosure of unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, and information held by federal agencies, and will examine transparency issues surrounding the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. Members will also analyze the work and effectiveness of the DoD's congressionally mandated All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is pretty big as well, actually. But the Task Force on the Declassification of Federal Secrets hearing, titled Restoring, we know that. It's going to happen next Tuesday, 10 a.m. EST, location as we know. And these are the witnesses that are going to be coming forward. So we've got Jeffrey Nucatelli, a U.S. Air Force veteran, Chief Alexandro Wiggins, a UAP witness, George Knapp, a UAP journalist, Dylan Borland, a UAP witness, U.S. Air Force veteran. Now, obviously, it's also all about whistleblower protection, because one thing that we've seen with regards to these UAP congressional hearings is that the whistleblowers that come forward, tend to get kind of washed out. They are usually threatened, they're, not looked after. But a little bit more on the people that are going to be taking part in this. So we've obviously got George Knapp. Now, we know George Knapp, he's the mentor to Jeremy Corbell. He's a renowned, obviously, investigative journalist based in Las Vegas, working on the chief investigative reporter for the Class TV. And he's a prominent figure in UFO and UAP research. Now, we all know a lot about George Knapp already. I'm sure I don't really need to go into too much detail. But we've also got Chief Alexandro Wiggins, So, Wiggins was a 23-year U.S. Navy veteran and Senator Chief of Operations Specialist, recognized for his expertise in radar operations. In 2023, in February, while serving as a radar specialist on the USS Jackson, Wiggins witnessed a significant UAP incident off the California coast. He observed multiple tic-tac shaped objects emerging from the ocean, displaying advanced flight capabilities with no visible propulsion or thermal signatures. Using the ship's Sapphire thermal system, Wiggins and his team detected 4 objects which moved instantaneously to the northeast, an event that he described as quote-unquote 2 steps behind instantaneous. His account has been corroborated by Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet, adding credibility to the incident's significance. And as we know, Tim Gallaudet was also part of the last UAP hearing. Then we've got Jeffrey Nicatelli. So Jeffrey Nicatelli is a U.S. Air Force veteran and former security officer who has become prominent in the UAP space as a witness and disclosure advocate. And a bit more about his incidents. And Nicatelli is known for his first-hand account of investigating a large, glowing, quote-unquote, red square UAP incident in the Vandenberg Air Force Base. The object hovered silently with no heat signature and was witnessed by many as 80 personnel. Now, a little bit more about his incident right here when he spoke on the Merged podcast.
About 8:45 in the morning, the dispatcher gets a call from range control, a technical sergeant from range control, and he says, I'm reporting an event that occurred at LF-21 and LF-10, 2 different sites in the same location. And what he said was the contractors working on site called range control, and they said there was a gigantic floating red square over LF-21 at low altitude. And they were just standing there watching this thing.
A red square. So
red square.
One thing that people have asked me after I spoke about this case at the hearing was, what does that mean, a red square, right? Was this a cube? Did it not look like it had depth, and so it's described as a square? I said square in the hearing because that's how it was described to me, just as you described it. And I'm curious if you have any additional details that you could add. Was it a 3-dimensional object? Did it just appear to be a square, and it just couldn't be? You couldn't tell.
So here's the issue. I had the original statement from the contractors. There were 3 contractors that worked for Boeing that saw this object, and they wrote sworn written statements. I've lost those. I lost them in 2012. I have some other statements, but those are indirect witness statements from it. But from my recollection of reading the documents, to the best of my recollection, it was a somewhat flattened square plane, and basically just a big square object, the size of a football field, silently floating over the launch pad. Wow. Red in color, glowing this red color. So as far as I know, it wasn't a cube. It was like a flattened square.
Got it.
So that's one of the people that will be testifying in front of Congress, and that was Jeffrey Nicatelli. We've also got Dylan Borland as well, who will also be testifying. Now, Borland is a U.S. Air Force veteran and confirmed to be a witness for the UAP hearing, scheduled for September 9th, of course. Borland is identified as a UAP witness, but specific details about his encounter are scarce ahead of the hearing. It is anticipated that his testimony will focus on the first-hand observation or experiences with UAPs during his Air Force service, likely tied to his geospatial and aerial intelligence background. These encounters may involve sightings or data collection related to UAPs or unexplained or unidentified objects exhibiting advanced capabilities. Now, Borland has made a few prior public statements about his experiences, making his testimony at the 2025 September hearing potentially his first major disclosure. And this could provide new insights into how the Air Force has encountered and processed UAP events. So those are a lot of the things. So this was also the Navy Chief Alex Wiggins, as he
typical
described
day
his
underway, conducting
UAP
normal operation
encounter, right? So, you know, he's come forward previously to talk about
into
this.
the night watch. We were standing, and typical day underway, conducting normal operations off the coast of San Diego. And there was a time that I witnessed on my radar a few contacts popping up. It was northeast on the contact on the radar. The radar is in true, so northeast-ish, looking at the radar, and noticed a few things come in and out. You know, I've been in the Navy for 23 years, so as an operations specialist, so I know the difference between, you know, helicopters, which I'm a helo controller myself, with an NEC of helo control, and knowing the difference between that, commercial navigation radars, which are your typical ComNav that are, you know, going to Hawaii possibly, and then atmospherics, so things like clouds, rainstorms, things like that. You learn over, you know, the years to differentiate what's what on your radar. So that night, I noticed that I couldn't differentiate what was what at all amongst the things that I just mentioned. So I decided to go out into the bridge wing just to take a look, to see. I didn't think it was that far away. I think, you know, it's nighttime, so light travels. So I figured, you know what, let me just poke outside, see what I can see. And to my surprise, which is something I've never witnessed, was a light I noticed on the horizon, but it looked as if it were surfacing out of the water and going up. Now, seeing lights on the horizon, very typical when you're out in the water, but seeing a light on the horizon going into the air is a different story. So witnessing that, I'm not sure of what I'm seeing. What goes through my head, maybe there's you know, a military team that's out there conducting flight operations, and maybe their helos hovering, something like this, you know, but their lights blink. I'm a helo controller, so I know that their lights, their running lights are going to be blinking, red, green, and, you know, pulsating. So it's not like it's going to be a solid light, and that's what I witnessed, was a solid light rising from the horizon up. So went back inside, looked at my radar to just kind of match what I'm seeing with my own eyes, and I didn't really see what I thought I was going to see. I only saw one light visually, but then I saw 4 different contacts on radar. So seeing those 4 contacts on radar, I asked our CSM, I forget what that stands for right now, but Combat Systems, I forget the full title, but asked the CSM to take a look on Sapphire. They're in charge of managing Sapphire and moving it around, to just look at surface and air contacts around our ship. So they slew over to the location that I gave them, the direction in which I gave them, and that's where you see the video cut into play, where you see it slew into that target to kind of look at it. And you know, they're the operator, so they know how to zoom in and kind of see what the profile of the contact that we're looking at, to kind of understand, okay, if it were a ComNav radar, which is a typical, you know, airliner 747, then we're going to say, okay, good to go. They're, you know, headed off to Hawaii or wherever, anywhere to the west.
And we also know, obviously, about George Knapp and his history of some crazy shenanigans, like him allegedly stealing the biggest UFO study in history of the world from none other than Russia. Yeah, apparently this is according to Jeremy Corbell when he spoke to, what's his name? Joe Rogan.
A ton of classified documents out of Russia himself during Glasnost and Perestroika. He went and met with the heads of the UFO programs in Russia during that time period. He came back with all those documents and actually supplied them to some people. Like that happened.
It had a lot to do with Harry Reid's decision to go ahead and support funding, because those documents show that the Russians are trying to do what we're trying to do, which is to take this stuff apart and figure out how it works.
And what year was this?
This is 1993, the first time I went. But their study lasted, they had the biggest study in the history of the world. From 78 to 88, the USSR sent out an order to every military unit in the vast Soviet Empire that any UFO, any orb, any ball of light, anything weird in the sky, all has to be investigated. and that information had to be funneled to the Ministry of Defense, to the desk of a guy named Colonel Boris Sokolov, who was in charge of this program. And I met him, and he shared a lot of that information with me. And he admitted, we're trying to figure this stuff out because if we could duplicate that technology, we could kick your ass in terms of stealth. We could beat you at your own game on stealth technology. So they were trying to do it. They're trying to figure it out. We hear bits and pieces that they have recovered crashes as well. So do the Chinese, maybe the Israelis.
I mean, also in these documents. So, and can you tell them who you gave them to? That whole stuff. Can you tell them that?
They got into the hands of the U.S. government. And then that was after I came back from Russia the first time. I went back again in 96. A lot of the people who had been willing to talk to me during Glasnost were now afraid. They would not meet with me. The people who had gone on camera changed their tunes because the whole country had changed in that time period. But the documents also went to OSAP. That's the program that the DIA ran. Bigelow was the contractor for it. And they hired a bunch of Russians to go through those documents, figure out the structure of the Russian UFO program, and did a lot more analysis than I could do just by myself.
And in these documents, they talked about shoot-down attempts, which is something that we'll be hearing more about over the next 15 weeks, I hope. So in Russia, they had this policy at first to engage these things, and they lost pilots.
Yeah, they had 40 different incidents during that study where Russian warplanes chased UFOs. 3 of those cases, the UFOs turned around and shot them down. They disabled the planes, and the planes crashed. 2 of those pilots died. And after the 3rd crash, the Russian Ministry of Defense put out the order, leave them alone.
So that is George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. So obviously, this is going to be a big deal for disclosure. This is going to be hopefully a big deal for whistleblowers as well, to kind of get that security and know that they're safe to come forward. What do you guys think about this? Is this going to be a good push for UAP disclosure, or is it just going to be more of the same, where we get a lot of words but a bit of a nothing burger? Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Way down there, jump scare the hell out of that like button and subscribe, and until next time, I'll speak to you later. Peace.